John Cena will go down as one of the most important WWE wrestlers of all time on merit. There is a good reason that the company crowned him a 17-time world champion and christened him the greatest of all time, calling him that every breathing second during his retirement year. Cena was, during the barren later years of ruthless aggression and pretty much the entire PG era, WWE's franchise player, the first one they'd had since Steve Austin. A legitimately huge draw at the top of the card, Cena is nonetheless a very divisive man. He received immense backlash in the 2010s when he was perceived as being overpushed, and he was called Super Cena for a reason. From the Nexus to Bray Wyatt, the list of wrestlers he probably should have put over is pretty damn long. Beyond his push, Cena has also drawn criticism for his working style over the years, which is a double-edged sword. There have definitely been times in his career where Cena could have benefited from being a more dynamic wrestler. That being said, lumping him down as a 5 moves of doom wrestler is a little bit silly in my opinion, because there is a lot more to being a great wrestler than simply being able to do 500 cool moves. If that's all wrestling was about, Teddy Hart would be WWE champion. But the thing about John Cena's working style is that while he has traditionally favoured a more simplistic approach, sometimes he goes bananas, pulling out code reds and ranas and a whole bunch of other flashy things that are usually more at home in Reseda, California than Stamford, Connecticut. These matches almost always serve as a middle finger to those who see Cena as a limited wrestler, and today we celebrate them. I'm Andy from WhatCulture, and here are 7 matches where John Cena went full work rate. Number 7 versus Logan Paul at Clash in Paris 2025. Logan Paul is an interesting opponent to start with here because the guy is basically all work rate. When he started wrestling, he very quickly showed that he can hang with almost anybody athletically and is more than willing to take risks and make big spots to get the crowd going. The other thing about Logan Paul is that his fundamentals are basically non-existent. He is the very definition of a spot monkey, which makes him a funny opponent for Indie Cena. Together, he and Super Cena traded moves and holds aplenty for just over 26 minutes. Cena had turned babyface again shortly beforehand, which was kind of perfect. Opposite a genuinely likable babyface in Cena, who was in the midst of his retirement tour, Paul had a huge advantage as a heel in front of an audience that was going to hate anybody on the other side of Big John. By now, people were well accustomed to seeing Cena hit moves like the Code Red, but it still looks pretty cool when he does it, because he looks like a man stepping out of his comfort zone. That's largely because he is. Wrestling should never look like some kind of perfectly coordinated, smoother than a Kinder Egg gymnastics display. It should be a little clunky at times because they are simulating a struggle. That Cena's high spots are kind of rough adds to that. Number 6 versus AJ Styles at Crown Jewel 2025. Generally, most people watching this will have more time for Crown Jewel's epic with AJ Styles than the Logan Paul match, simply because it's AJ Styles. That's not meant as a knock on anyone who prefers Logan Paul to AJ Styles. Objectively, AJ is a better worker, but it's an unfair comparison considering the disparity in experience between them. AJ has been one of the best in the world for several decades at this stage, while Logan Paul has had only a few dozen matches. It was nice to see AJ get some flowers versus Cena in Australia for Crown Jewel nonetheless. Pre-match, John prepared a touching speech for AJ that set the table nicely. Then they produced a showing worthy of ending 2 legendary careers at once. These boys left no stones unturned as they delighted fans in Perth for 27 minutes. There was a knowing nod towards the absurdity of their prolonged finisher train as well, but it kind of worked. John hit AJ with Bray Wyatt's sister Abigail. Styles responded by showing some love for Christopher Daniels, and there were other glances towards everybody from Chris Jericho and Randy Orton to Samoa Joe and James Storm. It was mayhem and it was a lot of fun as well. At times, as Wade Barrett said on commentary, it was as though these guys were trying to work something you'd see in WWE 2K, not a real-life wrestling match. Cena had his working boots on down under. His last international showdown will live long in the memory, and it'll take some topping during AJ's own retirement tour in 2026. They worked a game of can you top this, hitting moves for the sake of moves and to pay tribute to those who had illuminated their path along the way. Not exactly the deepest story in the world, but a hell of a good time nonetheless. Number 5 versus Sami Zayn from the 4th of May 2015 Raw. The 5th of September 2025 SmackDown became notable for John Cena handing over his US title Open Challenge deal to Sami Zayn, which came over 10 years after they had torn the house down in Montreal. Somehow, despite that first match lasting barely over 10 minutes, it would become known as an instant classic and one of the best TV matches of the era. Bret Hart introduced Sami to a booming pop, and the Hitman would have been mighty proud of the match that his man and John put together on the night. Keep in mind that this occurred in an era where Cena wasn't exactly known as some kind of flippy workhorse who could produce bangers in his sleep. It was still during the dreaded "you can't wrestle" and "Cena sucks" days, so this was a real treat. One of the best things about his Open Challenge spots were that they handed opportunities to guys who'd been showing out on NXT or elsewhere on the wrestling map before WWE. Sami was one of those people, and so was his good pal Kevin Owens. Special mention to the Absolute Wars that Cena and KO had in 2015, by the way. Those were really good, but a completely different style. In 10 rapid-fire minutes, Cena made Zayn look like somebody who belonged on the main roster and was close to being his equal. It was an impressive show of professionalism and skill from a star so big he honestly didn't need to give anybody a leg up the ladder. Sami played his underdog role to perfection, and he stunned Cena with some tidy spots that would pop back up in their redo in 2025. Number 4 versus Cesaro, the 6th of July 2015 Raw. By the time John Cena's US title Open Challenge series existed, some fans had already applied the nickname Indie Cena to John, thanks to exactly the kind of matches that we are talking about today. The aforementioned match with Sami Zayn was top-notch, but then Cena only went and topped it by inviting a personal favourite of his to work back-to-back wonders on Raw. Cesaro beat Cena by disqualification on the 29th of June, and it was so fun that WWE decided to press the repeat button on the 6th of July. This time, Cena and Cesaro went 30 pulsating minutes. Again, like with the Zayn match, it's important to remember the era being discussed here. WWE were scrambling for fresh ideas and new stars in 2015. This is true, but they weren't exactly prone to promoting 30-minute straight-up wrestling matches in the main event slot on Raw every other Monday. If they did push something lengthy onto television at the time, then it probably didn't feature a mid to upper mid-card name like Cesaro. He was given the floor to exhibit all the strengths that fans who'd enjoyed his work in Ring of Honor and elsewhere had loved for years. Credit where it's due as well, Cena did have ye olde working boots on, of course, but he laid out at times and let Cesaro's strength become the main focal point. One minor mini-botch on a springboard stunner aside, this was a flawless match that had plenty of action and showcased just how adaptable Cena could be when he was motivated. This 2015 run truly was a golden period for him between the ropes. He was largely out of the main event scene and seemed eager to elevate rather than dominate. Number 3 versus CM Punk on the 25th of February 2013 Raw. Money in the Bank 2011 will forever be regarded as one of WWE's finest hours. CM Punk beat John Cena in the main event to steal the top title and hold it hostage, which put a brilliant bow on his Summer of Punk run that year. Yes, Money in the Bank 2011 was magic, but it's not the match being analysed on this occasion. It was a very different type of match. A classic, but one more reliant on smoke and mirrors than WORKRATE. No, my friends, that award goes to the 25th of February 2013 episode of Raw. WWE billed this as a true blow-off to the Punk vs Cena rivalry, but there was also a WrestleMania 29 title shot versus The Rock waiting for the winner. Those stakes had fans in Dallas glued to the ring throughout. Spare a thought for anybody who was bursting for the toilet or fancied grabbing a drink or snack here, because they would have missed at least a few minutes of one of the best WWE TV matches ever. Cena bust out a fisherman suplex, he hit a guillotine leg drop from the top rope, and there was even a bloody pile driver thrown in for good measure. That move was lesser spotted back then, so it grabbed attention from all comers of the wrestling universe. So, mind you, did John using a bloody Hurricane Rana, of all moves. Rey Mysterio, eat your heart out. That fed into the attitude adjustment for the win, and Cena was heading to Mania for another match with The Rock. Once in a lifetime could suck it. This match was fire. Number 2 versus AJ Styles at Royal Rumble 2017. For John Cena, world title number 16, thus equaling Ric Flair's record, quote unquote, if you know, came at Royal Rumble 2017 and at the expense of AJ Styles. Styles had pocketed the WWE title in between beating Cena at SummerSlam 2016 and the 2017 Rumble. He'd shown himself to be one of the most reliable stars on the entire roster in his first full year with the company, but fans just knew that Hungry Jonathan wasn't staying away from the dinner table for too long. The upside was that Cena and AJ had chemistry coming out of their asses, so another stormer of a match was practically guaranteed before WWE's roster touched down in San Antonio for the show. There was so much to examine once they did, and a celebrated Cena vs AJ rematch hit the ring. For his part, John showed off some subtle heelish vibes nearly a decade in advance of his turn, as he grew frustrated over an inability to put Styles away. Throughout, Cena was in moves mode with a Z, by airing some spots that fans had never really seen from this era of his career, but are now expected when he's in there with the likes of AJ. The live crowd itself was sucked in by all of the near falls and bigger spots, and there wasn't much hatred for Cena's 16th world title win at all after the fact. Being honest, it would have taken a brave soul to boo Cena following this performance. He was a man on a mission, and I'm not talking about Mabel. Number 1 versus Shawn Michaels from the 23rd April 2007 Raw. And so we arrive at John Cena turning his work rate up to 11. These two had already worked wonders at WrestleMania 23 when they marched into London's Earl Court over in the UK in April 2007 for a little episode of Raw. Little did anybody clutching a ticket stub expect that they were about to be taken on a 55-minute thrill ride by a melodramatic master in HBK and a newer star who was raring to prove that he could hang in such a setting. Close to a full hour later, both wrestlers were exhausted, and so were those around ringside. It was work rate by definition. If you're going to go that long, you can't exactly have the cardio of Neil Ruddock. It wasn't just all gas, no brakes, however. The way both men picked their moments to hit the accelerator must be applauded as well. At the time, this was considered arguably the finest example of storytelling and pure wrestling melodrama that had graced WWE in years. Michaels was known for producing quality, but there would have been a ton of applause reserved for Cena behind the curtain as well. He had come through, more than holding up his end of the bargain by matching Shawn every step of the way, which wasn't something that just any old scrub could do. Psychology, action, drama, history, an old master versus young lion plot, excellent commentary, a hot crowd. Yes, this match had it all. Quite simply, it is one of the greatest WWE matches to ever take place abroad, and it would take some bout to top it in the future.